Man, you got a lot of different kinds of trellises around here.
Well, that's the most important thing with dragon fruit, Scott, is you got to have a really strong, sturdy trellis and think 5-7 years ahead. Because in time, something like this is our first trellis. It's a great trellis. It's similar to Spicy Exotics. This is actually hollow.
Right.
So what happens is you can see it does move a bit, and as long as you balance the plants out, it should be okay. But I think in time, Ty has had to apply straps to his.
Right.
So I thought, all right, this is great, but 5-7 years down, it's not going to be sturdy. So you saw our palm tree trellis, which should be pretty sturdy. And let's talk about some more. I have several different methods, and let's share them with you. So come check them out. This is kind of my version 2 trellis. And you can see I used 3-inch drain pipe, and I actually stuffed it with some rebar and concrete, and I went 2 feet down. So it's very sturdy. It holds my Thai white and my Asunta 4 really well. Now, a quick note about mixing varieties. If at all possible, I strongly suggest that you keep them in separate pots. Now in this case, this is my Thai white, which is a Hylocereus undatus on the left, very, very aggressive variety of dragon fruit, versus my Asunta 4, which is a hybrid, and I believe it has epiphyllum background. So one is much more aggressive and hardy than the other, and in time I'm worried that they will not live in a symbiotic relationship and compete for nutrients in a pot. Now, the reason why I kept these together, didn't just separate them and mess up the roots, is that I'm hopeful that my extra holes and the big hole that I put in the bottom of the pot will promote that the roots are going to leave the pot and trace, or track, I should say. They want to track down those nutrients that leach out of this high quality mixture. And as you can see, this is the Hylocereus undatus roots, most likely, or one of the dragon fruit's roots have already come out of this pot. And I'm sure there's plenty more going down in the holes that I provided. So use caution, and I'll talk more about it and show you what I've found online and in books about mixing varieties. All right, let's get back to the trellises. So you can see it's a similar design. It's actually slightly shorter. I'm using about 4 feet here. So using concrete, it's much more sturdy, and I did have to drill a big hole in the pot, as you can see down here. And I'm using either 15 or 20 gallon pots, all the way up to 25 gallon pots. So I prefer this method, but let me go show you kind of version 3 where I think it's even better. Let's go check it out. Okay, so this is my version 3 using trellis system, where I stuffed a 4-inch drain pipe with concrete and rebar. So that extra inch, it did require a bit more concrete, but to me it's worth it. It's extremely sturdy, and it houses this very unique variety here we're assessing right now. So this is some old DNA that I've collected, and a lot of it's 4-sided looking Guatemalensis. So I'm excited to see what becomes of this plant. So I'm happy that it has such a great, robust trellis that I'm not gonna have to worry about it blowing over or falling over in the future. So one thing I forgot to mention is that the version 1 trellis, like Spicy Exotics, a huge benefit is that you can move it. It's not permanent. So in this case, my Hana did great for a full season, and then started to get really bad sunburn this season just because the intensity of our sunlight, I don't know, it did fine for about a year and then it got really damaged. So I pulled it up into this shady environment so it gets much less sunlight, and you can see it's really bouncing back, as you can see the new growth. And again, there's one huge positive thing about this is that it is mobile. So if you have to move your dragon fruit, you can do this with a dolly like I did. It was pretty hard to move it up the hill, but it's possible. So let's go show you, if you don't want to use this style trellis and maybe you have a fence or a chain link fence or some type of fence, let's go show you another method that we use. All right, so here's another design if you have a fence like we do. And you can see I designed, or I hammered in some 7-foot metal posts because I want the majority of the weight to be on this structure here. And then I ran 100-pound vinyl coated wire that I found at Home Depot. It was pretty cheap, and I strung it through so most of the weight will be supported onto this. This is sort of an adaptation of the Israeli method. They do really long sections like this and plant really dense under shade, a shade canopy, shade cloth. So I like this method, but again, if you pan down in time, you're gonna see that the sheer weight of all these plants will probably make this fence fall over. So as long as I prune it back, and don't let too much of the dragon fruit overtake this fence, it should be an excellent trellis support. So another good method is I could move the pot if I had to. Obviously this plant is too large by now, but if I had to, I could prune it back and save the plant, maybe if it was a frost was coming or something. So this is another design that we really like to use, as you can see, and it's been pretty efficient so far. All right, so we did a video on this. I call it the double-decker trellis. Now, it was probably the most expensive trellis I've made so far, but we have two versions. We have a single story, and this is the two-story. And my reasoning or logic is that the plant here, Trinidad, is gonna climb up and go up to the top, and my sun-loving varieties will be on the top to provide shade for some of my more shade-preferring varieties. My white fleshed, my, what do I have in there? Alice Snow is probably gonna like less sunlight. So I will have two stories to harvest. I'm not sure how it's gonna go in a few years. I can envision this being quite full.
Yeah, you're learning too.
Yeah, but again, I wanna prune out that growth. So these trellising methods should work great as long as you keep your plants pruned and don't let them get out of hand. But wow, I really like this setup. It's very sturdy, and the plants seem to love it too, because I planted these just about 4.5 months ago from cuttings. So you can see that I think it's gonna work out fine. All right, let me show you another trellising method or two that we have still up our sleeves. Let's go check them out. So I don't know what you call this, but I call it the retaining wall trellis, I guess. So what I did is I have a well-draining pot. I drilled some holes into this ceramic using a special drill bit. And this is an unknown variety that seemed to be a white flesh and very shade loving. So you can see it's gonna kind of just grow on this really shady wall, and I suspect it's gonna do okay. My only concern is it may get some damage from the frost in the winter if this wall gets too cold. But luckily in our climate, I think it doesn't get that cold. We have very short durations of cold weather, so it's gonna be fine here. And you can see all the new growth. I mean, check this out. So I got these cuttings in the end of March. So they're doing great, and this is a definitely very sensitive, I would assume, white flesh variety. So let me go show you another trellis, and it's my favorite one. Hey Scott, come check this out. Let's see if it rooted yet. George Emmerich Jr. number 48. This is easily the longest cutting I've ever tried to root. And nope, nothing yet. But I will start to give this a little bit of water. And again, I'm gonna water the flesh. But this idea, we saw at Armstrong Garden Center, and they had this giant guatemalensis on a rock, and it was full of flowers. So that gave me an idea. I said, oh, I have a nice rock here. Let's see if we could put this dragon fruit on a boulder, and let's see what happens. So I'm excited to let this root, and hopefully it's just gonna fill up nicely on this boulder, spread out. And this cutting is about 12 feet long. So I'm gonna give it some water it lightly, and it should root in no time. And it's gonna spread over and just be gorgeous. So I like this trellis method. I think it's kind of cool. So give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll keep them coming, and hopefully we'll come up with some new style of trellises in the future. All right, have a great day.